Welcome, everybody, to the Senior to Seniors podcast. Here's something that may change the way you think about getting older. Aging does not just happen to you, it happens inside of your cells in seven very specific, very understandable ways. And for every single one of those seven ways, science now has answers. Today's guest started her career as a tropical ecologist studying plant physiology and earning a master's from the University of Connecticut. Then she earned her MD from the University of Maryland, completed her residency and fellowship at Johns Hopkins University, and became a Chief of Pediatric Anesthesia at the nationally recognized Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital. But in her off hours, as if she would have any off hours, she was doing something no one else had done. Drawing on her rare background in cellular biology, human pharmacology, and physiology, she spent years reading thousands of scientific studies and built the world's first comprehensive, scientific organized framework for why our cells age and what we can do about it. She calls it the Kaufmann Protocol. Her first book, Why We Age and How to Stop It, introduces the 7 tenets of aging, from DNA and mitochondrial energy to cellular waste and immune decline, and rates over 15 molecular agents using her one-of-a-kind Kaufmann Rating System so that every reader can build a personalized anti-aging protocol. Her second book, Aging Solutions, adds 28 more agents and even more user-friendly approaches, and currently holds a 4.6 out of 5 stars on Amazon, where you can find her book. She has been recognized as Best in Medicine by the American Health Council, serves on boards at Oxford HealthSpan and Da Vinci 50, has lectured at the Oxford Longevity Conference and Abundance 360, and is the founder of Club Exosome, bringing cutting-edge regenerative exosome therapy to everyday people. She runs, she swims, she rock climbs, treks to Everest Base Camp, and personally takes over 72 longevity ingredients herself. She lives every page of what she writes, and today she is here to share it all with us in our Senior to Seniors community. Please welcome to Senior to Seniors Dr. Sandra Kaufmann. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you. That was a impressive introduction. I didn't know that I had 4 out of 6 on Amazon.
There
Thank
you
you.
go. Well,
I did not know.
I had to check up on you, and yeah, congratulations on that, and congratulations on everything else that you have done to become so successful in your life. Where are you from? Are you in New Jersey today? Did you tell me?
I'm in New Jersey today, but I grew up in Frederick, Maryland, so outside of DC.
Yeah, and you do some work in Florida, in Miami. You
I
travel?
do. I
Okay,
do. I actually live in Miami,
okay.
and I have a clinic in Miami. I see patients there on a regular basis, and I have a clinic in Las Vegas. See patients there, and I'm a anesthesia consultant, which is why I'm sitting in New Jersey right now.
Man, sounds like you live a busy life, huh?
A little bit.
fulfilling, fulfilling life as well. So you have a very unusual, one of the most unusual origin stories I would guess that I've read in medicine. You started, your academic career as a tropical ecologist and literally in jungles, as I understand, studying how cells survive in extreme environments. And then Johns Hopkins, then pediatric anesthesiology, and then somewhere along the way you became the person who wrote what many experts call the most rigorous longevity framework ever assembled. Congratulations on that. So take us back. What was the moment this became your mission?
Um, so it was probably about 44, 45. And you mentioned that I was a rock climber. And in fact, I still am a rock climber. Um, And I was hanging on a cliff, and you climb in pairs, and
Mhm.
my partner was high above me, and I'm hanging there, and I just kept thinking, unless I stop aging, this could end horribly,
Mm. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And people have different talents and different gifts, and I just decided that I was going to use my knowledge and my resources to figure out why we aged. And I granted it's a little like, it's a little Don Quixote-esque, right? I'm chasing some windmills. But I was absolutely determined to figure it out.
Mhm.
And so that's what I set out to do.
Mhm. So, your first book introduces what's called the seven tenets of aging, if I'm correct. The seven reasons our cells why they age, and you use brilliant analogy: the cells as a factory. DNA is an instruction manual. Mitochondria are the power plant. The immune system is the security team. All of this works. So walk us through all seven of the seven tenets of aging for this audience, for my audience.
Yeah, sure. Sure. So, and I'll try to make it not as scientific because I think that it does get a little complicated.
Yeah.
But you're right. So it could have been more piles, but seven seemed to be a good number. So people sometimes say, well, why is this in this category and not that category? But now it is sort of stuck there, so it is what it is. But so tenet one is your DNA, right? This is the information if you go back to the factory model. And in your DNA, roughly three things go wrong over time. So in scientific terms, your telomeres, which are the ends of your DNA, get shorter. That's a problem. Epigenetic modulation occurs where you don't turn on or off the same genes that you used to. And then the third thing that happens is how densely packed your chromosome or your DNA is. So there's something called heterochromatin versus euchromatin, and the distribution changes as you get older. So it's harder to control your DNA, right? And the whole point of having DNA is the ability to make the proteins that you need to make. And as we get older, we just don't. We make the wrong ones. And sometimes the ones that we make are sort of like mucked up. So that is tenet one.
Okay.
Tenet two is mitochondria, right? We all know from the fifth grade that that is the energy source of your cells, but it actually does a whole lot more than that. It controls calcium metabolism. It controls whether or not your cell undergoes apoptosis. It does a lot of things.
Yeah.
Um, and your mitochondria go wrong in basically seven subcategories. And I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but the easiest one to know is that after the age of 40, people tend to be NAD deficient. So it's nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. And you need it, number one, to make your mitochondria work, but you need it for 500 different reactions around your cells. So over 40, repleting NAD is probably like the easiest thing you can do. It's one of those low-hanging fruits. So that's two. Three is what I call pathways. And these would be sort of like assembly processes in a factory. And it starts out, there's four main clusters here. The first one are their sirtuins. And you have seven sirtuins in your body, and they're all over your cells. So one, six, and seven are in the nucleus, three, four, five are in your mitochondria, and two sort of flits around your body. And these are essentially on-off switches. And they tell your body like to go to sleep or not to go to sleep, or they can control your circadian rhythms. They control where you put your fat. So, for example, I get people all the time and they say, well, I'm eating the same thing and I'm exercising the same. Why is my fat all of a sudden in my belly?
Yeah.
And the answer is circadian, or not circadian, I'm sorry, sirtuins. So if we boost sirtuins, we can fix that. But anyway, so sirtuins are one of the pathways. Then there's AMP kinase, there's mTOR, and then circadians. Circadian rhythm is a huge process. And I love to put this process in there because as people get older and they don't sleep,
Yeah.
sleep specialists tell you things like, make sure the room is dark, make sure it's cold, don't play on your computer or your phone. Well, in reality, you don't sleep because sirtuins and NAD control the production of two proteins that put you to sleep and two proteins that wake you up.
I want
And
those. I want those.
well, you have them, they're just screwed up. And so by boosting a variety of things, we can make those biological pathways work the way they're supposed to. And then you go back to sleeping like you were a kid.
Yeah.
And the problem with not sleeping is not that you feel miserable, but you repair your DNA and your proteins while you are sleeping.
Yeah.
So if you're not sleeping, you have more damage. So you're going to be more likely to get cancer and disease.
Yeah.
So that's important. Let's see, that's three. So four is what I call quality control, right? And if this was a factory, you have to not only check the quality of your machinery, but you have to check the quality of your widgets, right? So in cellular terms, you have a lot of DNA errors per day. You have 10 to the fifth errors per cell per day. So your DNA is just breaking down really fast. And as you get older, you don't repair it as quickly.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, you have 5 systems to repair your DNA. And if you don't keep them sort of in check, you will get disease or cancer. And then in terms of proteins, we talked about, right? Cells make proteins. If you don't check them and make sure they're working, right? And there's many ways of doing this, you're going to get disease, right? And then autophagy, which is the recycling of these pieces and parts, I also put in this category. So people like to talk about autophagy with aging. Let's see. So that's 5 is your immune system that ultimately becomes your inflammasome over time. So your wonderful immune system that fights off disease, pathologies, your natural killer cells get rid of precancerous cells. They get rid of a whole lot of things that have gone bad, right? You've got macrophages and leukocytes and all this sort of thing. As you get older, all of these things start to backfire. And we see this in terms of like if you try to vaccinate an older person, it doesn't take as well because the system isn't going well. You get an upregulation of mast cells, and this creates a lot of more immune reactions and allergies and anaphylaxis. And you become absolutely inflamed over time. In fact, someone gave it the name inflammaging, right? So you get all of these cytokinins being released from all these sorts of places. So you are constantly in a state of inflammation as you get older.
Yeah.
So that's 5. 6 is what I call individual cell requirements. So this is the idea that not all cells are the same. So stem cells, we want to take really healthy, good care of. We want to treat them like little children. Senescent cells we want to eradicate because those are evil and they produce cytokinins that destroy us. And then it's the understanding that a red cell is different than a liver cell, which is different than a bone cell, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, there's waste management, right? So if this was a factory, you have to take out the trash.
Yeah.
And this has to do with things that are just not helpful over time. So for example, you need glucose for cellular processes, but it creates problems. And when you get a lot of glucose, and it's not just glucose, it's basically all the reducing sugars, including fructose and ribose. It causes things called AGEs, which are advanced glycation end products. And these are these very sticky molecules, and they destroy proteins and they destroy DNA and they cause inflammation. And essentially, it's why your skin droops breaks your collagen. It's why you get congestive heart failure if you don't have coronary disease. It causes a lot of problems. But anyway, so soup to nuts, that is essentially why you age.
It's amazing. I've never heard anything broken down quite like that. And for someone that barely passed ninth grade biology, it's a little deep, but you made it very understanding. So your practice. Tell us what you do. Do you do do you do research any longer? Tell us a little bit of what your day is like.
So it honestly depends on the day.
Yeah.
So when I do longevity days, right? Yeah, I don't do bench research, right? I don't have a lab and I don't stare at cells.
Okay.
It's all sort of reference research.
Okay.
So I probably read 6 or 7 articles a day about something,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? I delve into one of the tenants and I try to sort of micro dissect what the issues are and then how do we go about fixing it. My last dive was into mast cells. And I meant to write like a 5-page blurb on it, and it turned into a 55-page blurb. So I went ahead and just because people ask me all the time, so I put it out on Amazon for like $1 or something,
Uh-huh.
just so people could read it. And presently I am on estrogen and I will be putting out a 50 some page diatribe on that. But I don't actually like do people research. So it's just all very, it's just book stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms of taking care of people, people will come to me and I am a longevity physician. So I treat them like they're coming to a medical doctor because
Okay.
they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at people, we look at what's bothering them, what aging things are worse than other things, right? Some people it's vision, some people it's back pain or energy or hair loss or, beginnings of different stages of diseases. What runs in the family? What do your siblings have? And then what do your labs show? And what physically can we see? So soup to nuts, sort of like doctor exam. And then we go through it and then prophylactically figure out what supplements, adjuvants, and medications or lifestyle changes can we put in to reverse and decelerate some of these aging problems.
And you're able to reverse some of those problems.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, standard medicine doesn't do this.
Oh
They
no.
it's so different. So why what motivated you to escape, the walls of I don't know, regular medicine, the typical doctor, to longevity, to having a longevity practice?
It's a good question. So I think so as as an anesthesiologist, right? So I
Yeah.
don't really actually treat people for anything. I just put them to sleep, make their blood pressure go up and down, that sort of thing, and then wake them up. But you get a huge look into pathology. And so you see all of these people with diabetes and hypertension and and it's horrific. It really is horrific. And medicine, standard Western medicine, we just wait for things to happen and then
Sure.
we fix it,
Yeah.
right?
Or don't even fix it. Just
Or
kind of.
or we treat, right? If you have appendicitis, we take out your appendix. If you
Yeah.
have high
Yeah.
blood pressure, so we give you some meds,
Yeah.
right? But if you look at cells and you can see it coming, right? Or if you even like if the insurance world, there's tables, they will tell you when you're going to die,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
And so my thought was if we know what's coming and we know what cellular pathways are going to precipitate it, why don't we prophylax against it? Right? And it's not a huge jump. It makes absolutely intrinsic sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? And one of the arguments people have is if I'm going to take meds anyway, why don't I just wait till I have to? Because I take a lot of meds. I take 13 pharmaceuticals for, diseases I don't have. But if I don't take them for a day or two, like it's not cataclysmic anything,
Uh-huh.
you know?
Yeah.
So I just strongly believe in the heading things off at the pass than waiting for things to happen because they're going to. We've done the experiment. Every person that has lived has died, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Every person that has lived has either been hit by a bus, fallen off a cliff, or had some horrible, like nasty thing at the end of their life,
Mm-hmm.
you know, lung failure, dementia, cancer. It's not pretty. So if you can live life with the at least reducing relative risk of chronic pathology, I just think life is so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have, and you created something um, called the Kaufmann Rating System, and so you score every molecular agent from 0 to 3 across the 7 tenets that we just talked about. So talk about that for a senior who is not a scientist, someone who is like me. How do you use this system to build something that actually fits into their own health situation?
Okay, so that's a really good question. And the numbering system derived from the fact that I was trying to keep things straight, right? And everything always derives from like you trying to accomplish something for yourself, and then it sort of blows up.
Yeah.
Um, so when I first decided, okay, well, you age in these categories, and then the question would be, well, what do you do about it? Right. So I would be in the literature and they would talk about a certain molecular agent, be it a drug, an adjuvant, biochemical, something. And I would say to myself, well, I wonder exactly what it does. So I would spend a ton of time going through all of the research literature trying to figure out in the tenants what it did, right? Did it
Mm-hmm.
do anything at all? Or how good was the evidence? So on my little chart, it turned into pluses and minuses. And I thought, this isn't really going to work. So I created a numbering system so that if I could find no evidence at all, so for example, agent X, whatever X is, right?
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
I looked at DNA and I looked and I looked and I looked, like nothing, if I find nothing, it got a 0,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
If there was evidence in a test tube or a culture, because that's always where research starts, it got a 1, right?
Okay.
If there was evidence in a non-human mammal model, dogs, monkeys, rats, whatever, it would get a 2. And not just one study, it had to be pretty conclusive. It got a
Mm-hmm.
2.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was evidence in humans, it would get a 3, right? And then I would take the same process and do it for each of the 7 tenants. And this takes a very long time to do,
Yeah.
right? And I guess in today's world, you could use AI, but I still want to do it myself because I feel like I don't know. I'm learning it at the same time, I guess. But anyway, so now all of these agents, and I think I've numbered 60 some over the counters and like 12 pharmaceuticals. Um, these numbers is just essentially tell you which categories they're the strongest in. And therefore, when you're creating your own protocol, you can sort of pick things based on education rather than a guess,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So, for example, diabetes, if you have a family history of diabetes, waste management or glucose management is going to be huge,
Yeah.
huge,
Yeah.
right? So, if you want to know what you're sort of looking at, if you look at my charts, then you pick things that have 3s in the category of the last number, which is waste management, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
different disease processes are relatable to different categories of aging, and therefore you can maximize your own therapies. So it's completely personable.
Mm. So, can you walk us through something? Can you walk us through how, for example, maybe even somebody in my audience who might be a 70-year-old woman with arthritis and diabetes would use your system differently than a 65-year-old man, for example, who is healthy?
Hmm.
Um, can you compare those two? Can you walk us through the difference?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing that you do is you have to think. So remember, we're not treating diseases here necessarily. We are
Right.
treating aging. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So the
Mm-hmm.
first thing you say to yourself is they're both above 40,
Okay. Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I usually start with something called the panacea. And
Okay.
it just turned into the panacea because the letters worked out. Like I don't claim that it's actually a panacea, but it does pretty damn well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So panacea stands for 5 things. It stands for pterostyl, which is an agent that comes from blueberries that is a sirtuin activator. Because one of the first things that happens as you age is that your sirtuins fail, right? So we start with pterostyl, that's P. A is astaxanthin. It is a very strong free radical scavenger, and it's natural. It comes from algae. It helps your protects your DNA. It lowers your the oxidative state of your HDLs and LDLs. It blocks sun damage actually, and it helps with your vision. So everyone in the world, with the exception of people with gout, should have astaxanthin, right?
Okay.
PAN. The N is for NAD. Anyone over 40, especially people with pathology, are deficient. So NAD precursor, so either nicotinamide riboside or nicotinamide mononucleotide is paramount, paramount, right? And then PAN. So there's 2 C's. There's curcumin,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the most powerful natural anti-inflammatories that we have. The key, however, is to have to get one that's bioavailable because the regular kind is just terrible. So you need to find something that's super bioavailable, but they're easily findable. And then the last one is carnosine, which is a transglycosylating agent. Okay. So basically, we're trying to get some glucose out of there. So that both of your patients here are going to start with what I call this panacea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a normal, healthy man is not as good. I can guarantee you he's not completely healthy. He's going to tell me things about himself that he's not going to like, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to say, I have back pain. I want more muscle. I want my vision to be better. I have a family history of cancer. Whatever it is, we are going to tailor his protocol for him based on that information,
And
right?
yeah.
a woman, on the other hand, so now she's diabetic. So we're going to do our best to control her diabetes. And we're going to try to get rid of some of the diabetic damage that she has, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's diabetic. What else does she have?
Um, I don't even remember what I asked.
Well, whatever she has, she's clearly,
Arthritis.
postmenopausal
Arthritis.
arthritis. So
Yeah, yeah,
I will tell you that every peri or postmenopausal woman's going to get arthritis. So
yeah, yeah.
we're going to fix that, and we're going to get some osteoblastic activators in there. And we're going to do more for lowering inflammation. So we'll probably throw some apigenin in there. It's a CD38 inhibitor that so it's an NADase, so it saves NAD and it decreases inflammation. And it's also the active ingredient in chamomile tea, so that's kind of nice.
Mm.
Um, and then we're going to talk about her, her perimenopausal state. If she's 5 or 10 years out, then estrogen doesn't really help. But there's going to be other issues, right? Because if you don't have estrogen after a period of time, you're more likely to get Alzheimer's and coronary disease and a variety of other things. So, what she will clearly have more needs than he
Then,
will,
uh-huh.
but we have to do it on an individual basis.
Hmm. And so this differs so much from the regular doctor.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's night and day, I would guess. Um, I'm not guessing it. It's night and day. So tell us a little for our listeners. How does a person find here in Texas, for example? How does somebody find somebody like you who is so thorough, who approaches medicine in a completely different way than maybe their normal physician that they have? How do they find people like you?
That's a really good question. And it's actually a little tricky. There's probably 10 to 12 of us in the country that do exactly this.
Yeah.
Um, you can go to a functional medicine person, but they don't do exactly what we do. They tend to be more, they'll check you for mold and arsenic and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So it's tough. There are people out there, and the idea is, there's lots of podcasts that people are on. There are a few people, but the key is that you really have to listen to what they are saying to determine their life strategy. So for example, in Miami, it is a corrupt world of quote unquote longevity physicians, and all they want to do is inject you with steroids and hormones and et
Take your
cetera.
money. Take your money. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just not the answer,
Yeah.
right? And if anyone wants to give you an NAD infusion, like that's just the worst idea ever, unless you've got like traumatic brain injury. So you have to sort of be careful, and you can't go to the guy around the block that puts up a little sign that says longevity medicine because he probably doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, that's what concerns me is finding the right person because anybody can put a sign up.
Yeah.
Anybody can find letters to put behind their name that makes them look like they're somebody that we should see. So gosh, it's just so hard to think how you find somebody that you really trust. And I guess you have to ask a lot of questions. Maybe it isn't that different from getting, when I moved here to Texas from Oregon and had to find a doctor, I just did a lot of background, and I think that's
Yeah.
what it takes to find that. I told a couple of people about this podcast that I was doing and meeting with you, and some of the people I talked to, and actually a lot of the people that I know, I live in a 55 plus community. Okay, so I'm around all these things you're talking about all the time. I
Hmm.
walk out the door and you can see it. I go
Hmm.
to the gym, and if there are people actually who take the time to go to the gym, you can see it. It's kind of funny. Sandra, when I go to the gym, I stand on a treadmill that I can see the reflection of people walking in the front door that are going to other functions going on at our senior center, our amenity center we live in a Del Webb community. And it's funny, I'm on the treadmill and I can see the reflections of people walking in, going to things like bingo or puzzles or those kind of things. And you can see the stark difference between them, and I'm no wonderful subject, but between people who are walking on a treadmill in the
Hmm.
gym and those people walking in. So I talk to a lot of people and see a lot of evidence of all of these things. But fatigue is one of those things that people have asked me. So, and you hear, oh, not being able to sleep, that happens to all old people. You're going to get maybe 4 hours of sleep a night if you're lucky, and that's just the way it is. Talk a little bit about sleep, and I guess there is a measurable decline in NAD plus, I guess is what it's called. Can you talk about that, about the whole thing with fatigue?
Yeah. So that's actually so funny. There's so many interesting questions all sort of like wrapped up into one.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm going to start with your where you live, right? There is a huge bifurcation somewhere between 55 and 60, where people that take care of themselves and are proactive do really well, and people that don't fail.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, you are sitting at that bifurcation, right? I'm 57 and I still rock climb, run, swim, like, because I'm part of the longevity world,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? It's
Mm-hmm.
incredible.
Yeah.
But so yeah, you need to go to those bingo people and be like, dude, you gotta move it.
It's a
Cause
cliff.
right,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have there absolutely is a cliff, and you can see people pouring over it. And if they want to die, great, right? But most people don't. Anyway, so that's the bifurcation. And so the question is what do you do? Right. And so very, very briefly, so every day, I create longevity pyramids for people. What do you do every day?
Uh-huh.
Diet is important. Exercise is incredibly important. And we go through, I mean, I don't care what people do, but you need to do two essential things. One is cardiovascular and one is weight training. And
Yeah.
for women especially, they have to jump.
Okay.
It is the activity of landing that activates osteoblasts. And that prevents osteoporosis. So it's either jumping or it's the vibration plate, but you have to look out for your cardiovascular system, your bones, and your muscles.
So I
That is
won't make fun of my
paramount.
wife anymore when she tells me what she's doing when she goes to her classes where they're jumping all over the place. And
It's
okay.
key. It's absolutely key. It's key. And it's not necessarily pickleball. Everyone loves pickleball. And you know who loves pickleball the most? Orthopedic surgeons. Because
I know.
you get these old folks that are twisting things they've never done in 20 years, and then boof, you've got an ACL tear.
It's the dumbest thing ever, I think, but whatever.
But anyway, so things you do every day, right? And then you've got light therapies and like, hot tubs and all that kind of stuff, which is nice. And then every week, everyone should get a body massage.
Hmm.
And the reason I'd say that is number one, it's relaxing. Number two, you're increasing blood flow to skin and muscle. And when you start looking at old people's skin, man, does it need blood flow?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then every month we talk about senescent therapy, where you start getting rid of senescent cells. And there's many ways to do that. And then I give exosomes to people once a month or once a quarter. And that's like giving people an injection of youth. I mean, it's absolutely stunningly incredible. Anyway, so those are the things that you need to do. But let's get back to sleep, because that's where you ended up.
Yeah.
And sleep, it's really interesting, right? Sleep is two proteins that are created that last like roughly 12 hours, right? And they are made, they go to the cytoplasm and they stimulate, they bond, and they go back and they turn on two other proteins that make you sleep. It is an absolute 12-hour on and off cycle of these four proteins. It's really incredible. And with age, you just don't make them anymore. Okay. And then there's two other proteins that increase sort of like the vacillation height, if you will, right? There's ROR alpha and reverb alpha. And you can play with those with biochemicals. On top of that setup, you've got sirtuin 7, 6, NAD, selenium. There's a bunch of things, right? So you can optimize each of these players and you'll sleep like a baby.
Wow.
It is age, right? But it's optional. You can fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you know, I only asked you just a few questions of all the questions I had, but we're nearing the end of this. There's a question I ask all my guests. Sandra, um, because I'm sure there's something I've missed. So I asked my guest, is there is there one question that I should have asked you that would benefit my listeners, the senior audience? Is there something I should have asked, but I didn't? And if there is, what would that question have been?
I think the most important question for your particular listeners is going to be when is it too late? Because I get that a lot.
Uh-huh.
And the answer is if you're 6 feet in the ground, it's too
Too
late.
late.
Right. But any moment before that, you can improve your life.
And you can and
You
you
you you
should.
can't. You absolutely should because every day that you get to do more stuff and enjoy your life and enjoy the people around you and not be sick is a win.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I see these old cranky people in their 70s and they're like, well, I'm going to die anyway. I'm like, you could live another 20, 30 years and you could have, grandchildren, great grandchildren. You could go
Hmm.
on massive adventures. Like, why give up?
Yeah.
Because life is fun and you get it once.
Yeah. Well, I see it here a lot. I can see people that have lost really two things. They've lost passion, for life, and they've lost purpose. And I think those two things really maybe drive all of this. You there is purpose, even though you're getting older. It's not a time to give up and just die. There's more, and there's people like you that can guide us to that end. The things that we talked about um, are in your two books. Am I correct? And so if people go to Amazon and they find your book, Why We Age and How to Stop It, Dr. Sandra Kaufmann, and then your other book called Aging Solutions, the things we talked about are all discussed there, if I'm correct. Is
Hmm.
that
Yep.
right?
Yes.
Fantastic. And so if people would want to contact you or learn more about you, uh, where should they go? Your website? Where should people go to learn more about you?
So all of my stuff in terms of seeing patients and clinical stuff is on a website called Kaufmann Longevity.
Kaufmann Longevity. Okay.
And that sort of explains what we do because I see people in person, I see people online, et cetera, et cetera. And then if you want to learn more about the actual process of aging, that's the website called Kaufmann Protocol. So
Okay.
two options.
Okay. And one other question: insurance. I mean,
Nope.
that's a huge thing. So does insurance cover your
No,
services? And
no.
how can that be changed? What can we do to help change, or is that industry just too big?
That's a really good question. I don't know. If at some point, I would imagine in, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years,
Yeah,
right, this will be standard of care.
yeah,
Right now, it's just considered kind of out there, right? Because no one understands it.
mm-hmm,
And the other thing I will tell you, which is sort of unfortunate, is a lot of the people like me charge an absolute fortune, like, $100,000 a year for this stuff. And I
yeah,
don't. I'm very, very, very reasonable because I'd like to bring it to
yeah,
people, like regular people.
sure,
Um, Insurance, it's what when it becomes more common, insurance will start covering it. I mean, you're lucky if they cover your blood pressure medicine right now that you really need.
yeah.
So the idea that they're going to cover something that you don't really need is out there.
Well, I would just suggest I'm not as politically active as I used to be in my life, but it used to be quite politically active. You need to reach out to those people who are representing you because they don't understand this.
No.
They have stuff on their table which is sometimes ridiculous, but they're not taking the time and maybe don't have the time to really learn these things that they need to learn. So, I think it's one step at a time. Reach out to people who can make change, and it might not happen in our lifetime that insurance covers this, but it should. And so I hope people will reach out and try to find a way to make you more available to more people that you can help, because I can see you have a passion and you have a mission to be able to change things. And so I want to thank you so much, Sandra, for being here today. Awesome. I learned a lot, and I hope people grab your books, and make sure you tell your friends and your neighbors about this podcast. Send them here. And if they're like me, they're going to listen to it 2 or 3 times, because I miss so much writing notes and so forth. Sandra has a lot to offer, and I think this podcast has a lot to offer them. So Sandra, thank you so much for being here today, and let's talk again.
Thank you. My pleasure.